Audio check, Tiara.
Check, check.
Okay.
Hi, checking.
Okay, in three, two, one, action. Welcome to Kemenkes Podcast, live to you from Arya Duta Hotel, Kuta, Bali. Um, we hope you have enjoyed your stay here, Miss. We hope you have a very rested night. I know this is a very, packed schedule you have here. Today is the second day of the World Health Organization Southeast Asia Regional Meeting. My name is Tiara Cahyadian Shiva Hernawo from Poltekkes Kemenkes Yogyakarta, and today we have a very special guest, Miss Joy. How are you, ma'am?
I'm fine. Thank you very much.
We hope you have enjoyed today's event so far. Would you please like to share to me what is the most highlighted event of um, today's agenda? Let's
Oh,
say.
I think the highlight for me of today's program was going on the field visit. We
Oh,
did a field visit to
right,
the
right,
Polytechnic
right,
in
right,
Denpasar,
right.
and we also visited a primary healthcare center. And I was really impressed and fascinated by what's happening with midwifery education and also just seeing the high quality care that's available to people, at the community level was really fantastic. So yeah, that was a highlight for me.
Ladies and gentlemen, you might ask, why did she mention midwifery? So, actually, Ms. Joy here is from UNFPA Bangladesh. So, Ms. Joy, please introduce yourself, maybe briefly, a short story about how you got here and what is your job essentially in UFPA Bangladesh.
Sure, thank you. So, yes, as our colleague said, my name is Joy Kemp, and I'm the International Midwife Specialist with UNFPA Bangladesh. So, UNFPA is the United Nations Population Fund. So, we're a sister organization to the World Health Organization. And so, I'm here representing the Asia Pacific region of UNFPA Bangladesh at this workshop.
And how long have you been in this organization, ma'am?
So I joined UNFPA 18 months ago.
18 months ago.
Yeah, before that, I was working for the Professional Association of Midwives in the UK, which is my home country.
She's from the UK, everybody.
And I was the international advisor there for 10 years before I joined UNFPA Bangladesh. And in that role, I had been working in Bangladesh already since 2016. 2016. So, although I've only been with UNFPA in Bangladesh for 18 months, I've been working in Bangladesh 8 years or so. Yeah.
Long career, right? So I want to ask you, what is the difference between the curriculum, or maybe how midwives in the UK, in Bangladesh, and Indonesia are educated in? Because, like you say, today we went to the Polytechnic of Health of Denpasar, right? And the dean explained to us about the different curriculums that are available in the Polytechnic. So I would like to ask, what is the difference in the academically between UK, Bangladesh, and Indonesia?
Well, I think the basic answer is there isn't a big difference because there are international standards for midwifery education.
Right.
And so the curricula in UK and in Bangladesh and in Indonesia
Right, right.
are matched, benchmarked to the international standards. So there are essential competencies for midwifery which are set by the International Confederation of Midwives. And there are also international midwife education standards. And so all curricula should be matched
Should be
to
matched.
those standards. They're not in every country yet, but they are in UK and Bangladesh and Indonesia. So those standards say that a midwife must have education for 3 years.
3 years, minimal.
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 There is one other route, which is that you can study nursing for 3 years
Ah.
and then you can study midwifery for 18 months additional to nursing. So there are two ways to become a midwife. But I think in Bangladesh and in UK now, and I think in Indonesia, you have the direct entry midwifery training, which is a minimum 3-year program.
Right.
So there are some differences. because of we have different countries, different contexts. There are some differences in how midwives practice. For example, this morning I learned in the curriculum here that entrepreneurship is studied as a topic,
Right.
and also managing disasters and emergencies is a topic within the curriculum.
Right.
I also noticed that religion and citizenship were topics in the curriculum. Those subjects are not part of the international standards, but because of your particular context here in Indonesia, those items are added. And I think that was really interesting for me. One thing which may interest your listeners is that recently the international competencies for midwife have been updated.
Oh, okay.
And so another competency has been added, which is around the broad sexual and reproductive health role of a midwife.
Right.
So midwives being competent to provide, for example, cervical cancer screening and abortion and post-abortion care and family planning. So there's a wide SRHR remit, but also midwives, the competencies now are for midwives to know how to practice in a humanitarian and emergency setting. So I think the content in the curriculum here, which is around disasters and emergencies, shows that you're already ahead of the game and already preparing for the new competencies. So that was really interesting to see that, and to see the school and the fantastic facilities, particularly the skills laboratory,
Right.
was really encouraging to me. We were working hard for that in Bangladesh, but we still have some way to go.
I'm glad to hear that, ma'am, because I am actually a nursing student. I am a third year nursing student, and I finished my maternal clinicals a few weeks ago, and I noticed that in Indonesia, actually the midwives practice a lot more in the clinics like that we saw the puskesmas in Indonesian, but for the hospital settings, it's mostly nurses. So there's that type of difference, but I do notice that the midwives are allowed like for IUD insertions like that, but there is a doctor attending. Of course, it's not just a midwife practicing it, autonomously, right? What would you describe being a midwife in Bangladesh is like? I wanted to, because I don't have friends from Bangladesh.
Sure.
I wanted to know what is the healthcare setting is like, because mostly in Indonesia it's focused like on Malaysia, maybe Thailand, like our previous guests here. So would you please explain that?
Sure. So in Bangladesh, which is part of the Indian subcontinent, so it's part of South Asia, like Indonesia, Bangladesh is a majority Muslim country.
Right.
And midwifery is a new profession. So previously they had nurse midwives.
Right.
They were not educated to the international standards. So midwifery education started in Bangladesh in 2013. So it's just more than 10 years.
Right.
And so the first midwives graduated in 2016. And then they entered the workforce, the government workforce, in 2018.
Right.
So it's still a relatively new profession.
Right.
And there are so far 2,500 midwives in the workforce, but we need 25,000 or more midwives. So we're working hard as UNFPA, which is the UN agency with a remit for strengthening midwifery.
Right.
We're working really hard to advocate to the government to create more posts and to deploy midwives to those posts as soon as possible. So the midwife's role in Bangladesh is really broad. It really matches the international competencies. So they're not just for delivery.
Right.
I think people, when they think about a midwife, they often think she does antenatal care, postnatal care, and delivery.
Right.
But the midwife's role is actually much broader than that. They are an autonomous practitioner for sexual, reproductive, maternal, newborn, adolescent health. So they can provide the whole remit of care from preconception care, antenatal care, delivery, and postnatal care. They also can provide health sector response to gender-based violence. They can do cervical cancer screening. They can provide safe abortion, or in Bangladesh, that's known as menstrual regulation, and post-abortion care, and family planning services. And they also have a role in Bangladesh. The average age of getting married is around 18 years.
Oh.
So if that's the average, you can imagine that many girls are married before the age of 18.
Right.
We still have a big problem in early and child marriage. So midwives are also being positioned to take a key role in preventing early and child marriage. So it's a very broad role. And where midwives are working now, where they have been posted, they're doing almost 90% of the normal deliveries, which is a big change.
Right.
But they're also providing all those other services as well. So it's really exciting. It's actually a huge social transformation introducing midwives in Bangladesh. But we have a lot of work to do. And it's not just about getting midwives in the workforce. But of course, midwives need a career structure.
Right.
They need to have an idea. They need to be able to be promoted and to do further education.
Right.
And we need midwives in leadership in all areas, whether that's education, clinical practice, policy, research, and education. So although we have midwives now, we still have so much work to do.
Now, speaking of further career prospects, I noticed from my city at least, and my friends, not only midwives but also nurses. A lot of my friends are heavily focused on clinical practice, and they believe that we should focus more on working as a practicing nurse or midwife, and that is not a bad thing. Especially at the state of the world, I think we need more in the clinics, but for others who might enjoy working in the office or working, across the globe, like you yourself, ma'am, from UK and working in Bangladesh and traveling to Bali, I think, would you please explain to us what are the different career prospects of midwifery and how they can achieve that? Like maybe different degrees, like what sort of, you have to get master's degree or maybe a PhD or maybe specialty like that, ma'am?
Sure. Well, every country, of course, will have its own career structure for midwives, depending on the system in their country, in the Ministry of Health, where they come from. And you are right, we definitely need midwives in clinical practice. That's the most important role for midwives, to provide high quality sexual, reproductive, maternal, adolescent healthcare to women and their families. That's the most important role. But to do that, they need an enabling environment. You can't just put a midwife in a clinic and expect that to work. They need people who can help create the enabling environment. So we need leaders. So leadership, developing midwifery leaders is really key. And then midwives need evidence. We are supposed to provide evidence-based, high-quality care. Midwives need the evidence for their practice. And the definition of a profession is one which has its own body of research and evidence. And when you have a new profession like midwifery, it takes time to build that body of research and evidence. So I think there is space for midwives to develop as research midwives or midwife academics. And then we also need faculty. We need teachers who are midwives who can guide and mentor future midwives. So we need some midwives who have an interest in teaching to become midwife faculty. And then we also need midwives at the policy level, because that's part of creating the enabling environment. Ideally, the International Confederation of Midwives is trying to champion that every country should have a chief midwife sitting at in the Ministry of Health. And we need different levels of midwives within, the system, providing supervision and mentorship. So there's a lot of different roles I think broadly we can say midwives in practice, in policy, in education, and
right.
in research and evidence. And then, of course, working internationally can be an option. I know that in Indonesia, you have many health professionals who travel to other countries. In my own experience, when I trained as a nurse actually before I was a midwife, because I'm very old. And in my country, when I wanted to become a midwife, I had to do nursing first. At that time was the rules. So when I first qualified as a nurse, I did some humanitarian work. I was actually doing maternal and child health, and that's when I thought I have to be a midwife.
Right.
So I went home back again to UK and trained as a midwife. And I guess I've had a parallel career where I've done a lot of international development and humanitarian work, but I've also worked as a midwife, as a midwife faculty, as a research midwife. And then I'm just incredibly lucky now that the role I have brings all of that experience together. I was also very passionate about belonging to and helping to lead my professional association, the Royal College of Midwives in UK. And so the last 10 years, my role before I joined UNFPA has been helping to strengthen professional midwives associations in low and middle income countries. So there are a lot of roles for midwives to work globally, not just to go and work in a hospital or clinic in perhaps a high income country or somewhere in the Middle East, wherever it needs healthcare professionals, but also strengthening midwifery across the world. We still need international experts to help support midwifery. So I'm really honored and privileged to have this position as a midwife specialist for UNFPA and to have this platform, to raise the voice of midwives. So thank you for this opportunity. It's great.
You heard her and her amazing career. We are so honored to have you here with
My
us.
pleasure.
Back to the question. You said about furthering their education for teaching profession, because in Indonesia, to be a professor, to be a teacher in a university, you have to have a minimum of master's degree. So is it possible for a midwife student from Polytechnic of Health of Indonesia to attend to a midwifery college maybe, or maybe a health college in UK now? Or how is it?
It can be, certainly. There are, programs and sometimes now universities in UK or other countries have online programs. But I think also for every country, they need to develop their own higher education framework. So for now in Bangladesh, we train midwives first at diploma level. In the future, we want to train them at bachelor's level and entry level to be bachelor's. But for now, they do 3 years diploma. So we just have the first cohort who graduated from the bachelor's program. So that's a post basic course. So they've done a 2 years bachelor program after their 3 years diploma. And there are now 80 who just graduated, 4 different colleges, 20 in each cohort. We hope they will be our midwife leaders for the future. And we are in the process of developing a midwifery MSc curriculum, Masters in Science in Midwifery. And that will start in 2026.
That's exciting.
So we hope that we will grow our own midwife teachers in Bangladesh. But so far, we don't have a PhD in midwifery program. That's an aspiration. But right now, we have sent some midwives with master's degrees, or no, they're actually nurse midwives because we don't yet have midwives with master's degrees. But some faculty have gone to Thailand. So there is still a role, I think, for some international migration for education, because we want those 2 nurse midwives with their PhDs to come back and lead the master's program for us in Bangladesh. And in the future, we hope to have a PhD midwifery program, but
hopefully
we don't have that yet.
right?
Yeah. So I think definitely people can travel abroad for study,
Mhm.
but the most important thing is to develop those resources, if not in the country, definitely in the region.
Right.
Because actually, midwives from Asia, it's more appropriate for them to be educated in Asia, because
That's right.
then
They understand the culture,
and the
people.
contextual
Yeah,
understanding,
I
exactly.
understand.
And it's such a huge shock to go to another country where
That's
the
true.
language is different.
That's
You
true.
know,
The standards are maybe,
yeah.
very different, right? So after, let's say, after they finish their masters, um, if I may ask, what are the job criteria to apply to UNFPA? Like, do you have to have a certain degree? Do you have to have certain hours or certain years to your career? Or
Sure. Well, there are different roles for midwives within UNFPA. So, for example, we have some midwives who are international midwives who are mentoring our Bangladeshi midwives working in the humanitarian arena. We have over 1 million refugees currently in Bangladesh. So we have and also Bangladesh is very prone to floods and natural disasters. So across the country, not just in the humanitarian area and not just in the refugee area, we have midwives deployed in the humanitarian. So we have some international midwives mentoring those.
Mhm.
And then my position is kind of more at a national position.
Mhm.
But for both of those, the requirement is for a higher degree, a master's degree in midwifery. And for my position, I had to have a minimum of 7 years experience working in international work at a high level. So it depends on the role, what the qualification is. But yeah, so for my role, that was the requirement.
Minimal master's degree, right?
Minimal master's degree and 7 years professional experience at a senior level.
All right.
Yeah.
So I think it's because this is the first time I've actually attended a World Health Organization, and I'm actually very, very, very grateful to be here. And I see nurses who are my ideal goals. Like, I really wanted to work as they are working currently, maybe. So it's actually really exciting, and now I get to learn more about midwifery and the criterias that are available for organizations worldwide. Because, like I said, maybe it's because of my city, maybe because our target is different, and it's not a bad thing, but my friends are heavily focused on their clinical side, not really, you know, broadening their experience outside of that. And I really, think, is it possible for us to teach the younger generations to continue nursing and learn from, like, this global setting, from this country, we apply this, and maybe it's ideas that we don't know about, and it's just refreshing new ideas. So I think for me, that is all of my questions.
Okay.
Before we end this podcast session, I know it's getting really long. I would like to tell you a slogan for Poltekkes Jogja. It's Unggul, Berbudaya, and Mendunia. So would it be possible for you to say it with me, ma'am, to the camera?
Repeat it one more time for me.
Unggul,
Unggul,
Berbudaya,
Berpudaya,
Mendunia.
Mendunia.
Yeah.
I'll try.
Okay. So after I say
Yeah, what does it mean actually?
excellence, like
Excellence.
the highest level of
Unggul.
excellence. Unggul, Berbudaya is culturally very cultured, because Jogja is it's a culture hot pot. Everywhere from Indonesia come to Jogja to study. So come to Poltekkes Jogja. And Mendunia is worldwide. So we hope
Mendunia.
to, have students maybe attend college worldwide and come back to teach at Poltekkes Jogja.
Excellence and
like
culture worldwide.
worldwide.
That's fantastic.
Okay, after I say Poltekkes Jogja,
Yeah.
Unggul, Berbudaya, Mendunia.
Mendunia.
Is that awesome? Okay. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Poltekkes Jogja, Unggul, Berbudaya, Mendunia.
Great. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
It's a wrap.
Yes, wrap.
Wrap.